Hello, and thank you so much for visiting my channel. This is Gina from McGuire. Today I have a really fun technique for you that I discovered by accident, and I call it laminated stamping. This is an excellent way to get crisp images on acetate that you can use for clear cards, shaker cards, windows, and more. I have a few examples for you today, but I probably will share more ideas in a future video. I've done many videos showing how you can stamp on acetate. Sometimes you can heat emboss if it's a high heat resistant acetate. Sometimes you can stamp with a stays-on ink or a permanent ink. Well, today we're doing stamping inside of a laminated pouch. That way you get really crisp results that won't rub off. You don't have to worry about it drying. Let's start with this example here and you'll see what I mean. For this card and many others in today's video, I'll be using this new Sparkle and Shine card kit from Gina Designs. This is a massive kit, and the value of it is almost twice the cost, so it's a really good investment. There are two large 6x8 stamp sets, a 4x6 stamp set, a stencil, a set of stitched tag dies, a set of snowflake dies, and cardstock, all included in the kit. So I'll be using two of the stamp sets today and both of the die sets. But remember, there's a lot in here that you can use over and over again. That's one of the things I like about her kits. Now, several of these products work great for today's technique, but keep in mind you could do these techniques with other stamps you have, which you'll see as we go. Now, this is one of the stamp sets in the kit, one of the 6x8 sets. I like that there are images in here for Christmas and for Hanukkah. And that big flourish image is just beautiful. So I thought I would use that to stamp on a clear card. Now, normally if I wanted to stamp with white on a clear card, I would use white stays on, but I don't always get crisp results, and I find that it takes a long time for it to dry so that it doesn't smear. I could white heat emboss on an acetate, but I have to make sure it's an acetate that can handle that heat. Well, today's technique I find gives the best results, and I'll describe why. So these are laminating pouches. Basically, it's like a clear folder. You put a piece of paper in it, run it through a heated laminator, and it laminates it for you. I laminate my recipes, my kids' stuff to hang on the walls. I laminate the dividers for my stamps. I use my laminator and laminating pouches all the time. These happen to be the ones that are 3 mil thick. There's also 5 mil. You could do that too. I'll link to the ones that I use below. These pouches will fit a letter size piece inside of it. I don't need it that big, so I'm just going to trim a little bit off the side there. Okay, so now we have our laminating pouch ready to go and add some stamping inside of. Now here is our card, and you can see on the front of this clear card, I have stamped that beautiful flourish in white. When you open up the card, it's a side fold card, you'll see that the stamping's only on the front. The back part of the card is clear. So let me show you how I did that. I used my MISTI stamping tool just to make it easier, but you could use an acrylic block. The distance between that purple tape and the right edge of my MISTI stamping pad is 4.5 inches, or 4.25 inches, sorry. So that's the width of our card. I'm making a 4.25 by 5.5 inch card. So I'm opening my laminating pouch, and I'm putting the corner right up against the edge of that MISTI stamping pad. I'm lining up the flourish image towards the top, and then I'll close the door on my MISTI and transfer that to the door. And now we can stamp inside of our laminating pouch. I am putting a piece of scrap cardstock along where that purple tape is, and that is to mask off the left-hand side of our laminating pouch. That'll end up being the other side of our card. I'm just stamping it upside down here. It was easier to do that in my MISTI stamping tool. So there you can see I'm masking that off. And now I'm using a white pigment ink. I will link below to a few different white pigment inks that work great. Gina even has an ivory pigment ink that's beautiful too. So I'll ink this up as well as I can, or as generously as I can, and then stamp it on to the laminating pouch. Again, the laminating pouch is open at this point. I have this eraser for a dry erase board that I use to rub across the top of my MISTI to make sure I've transferred all of the ink. And look at that beautiful crisp result. Now I'm removing the stamp and rotating it and lining it up to stamp it again below what I've already stamped. So I've positioned it in there. I still have my laminating pouch up against the edge of my stamping pad and my MISTI tool. I'll mask off this side over here so it stays nice and clean. And now we'll stamp this again with white pigment ink. I find white pigment ink works outstanding for this technique, but I will show you some other inks that work later in this video. But the gist of it is pigment inks are best for this technique. All right, after I've stamped that, I can remove that piece of cardstock that I used to mask, and we can laminate this. But I used a white pigment ink pad that was really juicy, very, very wet ink. So I'm using a heat gun just to dry this a little bit. Now I am not applying much heat at all. I'm just kind of waving it lightly from far above, just trying to dry that ink a tiny bit. But I found you don't really have to do this step. It depends on how wet your ink pad is. Most of the time you do not need to do this. Now, normally laminating pouches have a piece of paper in there to give it some stability as it goes through a laminator. I found if I use a scrap piece of cardstock and put it in the fold at the top of the laminating pouch, that's enough to make it secure to go through. So I put a piece of scrap cardstock in there. So this is folded closed, so the stamping is inside of that laminating pouch. This is a heated laminator. You just give it a little bit of time to warm up. It'll do a little ready light there. And then you feed it through and it applies heat and it applies pressure. Any heated laminator would work for this. If you have a Mink machine, you can also use that. I use my laminator almost daily around the house, and I use it for crafting. This also comes in a 12-inch version if you want to do even bigger laminating or more at once. Okay, so you can see it coming out the other side. The white ink is trapped inside of that lamination. So it's not going to rub off, it's not going to scratch off, and it'll stay nice and crisp. And look how beautiful that is, especially with this particular stamp. I just love it. So now we can easily trim this down and turn it into a note card. So I'm just using a trimmer here. Lamination cuts very easily with any kind of trimmer that you may have. You can also use your scissors or die cut it if you want to. So what I'll end up doing is cutting this to 8.5 by 5.5, and then I'll score it right down the center at 4.25. I'll then fold that over and check it out. I'm creating a note card with the stamping on the front of the note card. Now when I go to reinforce that score line, you'll see that it doesn't fold completely. It kind of bows up a little bit. Well, here's a trick to get it to be flat. All you need to do is run it through your laminator again. So I have it folded and I feed it right through my laminator, and it'll give it a nice folded crease there, and we'll have a great clear note card with stamping on the front that won't get damaged because it's inside the lamination. So here you can see how it comes out. Beautiful clear note card. And you can use any background stamp for this technique or individual stamps repeatedly stamped, whatever you want. For the focal point on this card, I'm using the other 6x8 stamp set included in the card kit that I showed you earlier. Here's a look at that gorgeous stamp set, and what I really like about it is it reminds me of the Gina K Designs stamp set that they designed for Stamptember over at Simon Says Stamp that sold out very quickly. And you can see here on the right a card that I made with that Stamptember set. Well, you can see you can do similar looks with this stamp set. So if you missed out on that other stamp set, check this one out. And I will link to the video showing that card on the right up here in the top corner in case you want to check it out. Okay, so I decided to use the snowflake there with the little break in the middle so I can add a sentiment in it. I'm using my anti-static powder tool and stamping the image with VersaMark Ink, and I'll do this twice so that I can have a snowflake image for the front of my card and for the inside front of my card. I'm adding silver embossing powder to each and heat setting it. After I heat set it, I decided to double heat emboss it. By double heat embossing, you get more dimension and it gets kind of smooth and bubbly looking. It's super cool. So I let it cool, use my anti-static powder tool, stamped right on top of the embossing I've already done with another layer of VersaMark ink. Then I'll add another layer of silver embossing powder. So there you can see it's going right on top, and we'll heat set it again. And this will give more dimension to our heat embossing. I'll give you a close look here, and look how beautiful that is on the colored cardstock. So if your focal point is a heat embossed image, I highly recommend doubling up the heat embossing layer because it makes it look even better. In the center of one of these, I will stamp Christmas Wishes with VersaMark Ink, and then white heat emboss it. I use Gina K white detail embossing powder for this. I like to use her detail embossing powder whenever I do sentiments, so I don't lose any of the detail. I white heat embossed, I think it was Season's Greetings, in the center of the other one, which will go inside of my card. Off screen, I die cut those snowflakes out with a circle, and then I die cut a circle that was slightly larger than that from a darker plum colored cardstock, so I could have a nice mat. Now you can see I have 4 circles over there. This one will go on the front of the card, and this is the one that says Christmas Wishes. I'm using a strong double-sided tape to add this to the front of our card because I don't want it to come off. Any strong adhesive would work here. I will then add this to the center front of our card. Now the other snowflake one that says Season's Greetings, I'll put adhesive on the back of it, and then I'll glue that to the inside front of the card. This will hide the adhesive from the circle that we added to the front. So when you open the card, you'll see the surprise greeting too. Now we have another circle, and this one will get glued to the back of the card, so I just line it up while the card is closed. This will give us a spot on the back of our card to stamp or write the message handmade by Jennifer, or it's just to hide the adhesive from showing through. Whenever I do a clear card, I like to put something on the front, the back, and both the insides, so you don't see any adhesive. Now this one with the white circle will go on the inside of the card as a place to write our personal message. So I thought it'd be fun to add that with a light pink note card, and I also added some silver gemstones to the snowflake on the front. You can see how nice and crisp that white stamping is on the acetate. It was very simple to do. You could do any color pigment ink for that. There's just something really stunning about using that bright white. Another way you can do a laminated stamping is for windows of a shaker card. Now, I did a video where I showed how you could put embellishments like little sequins and glitter inside of a laminating pouch and then running it through so that it's embedded. You could definitely incorporate that with this technique also. I'll link to that other video here if you haven't caught it. But today I'm just sticking with the stamping inside of the laminating pouch. The nice thing about this is laminating pouches are very thick, so it creates a very durable, strong window. On this card, I'm using the beautiful new Gina K Designs Handlettered Holiday Stamp Set. I thought the Wishing You the Merriest, Most Joy-Filled Sparkling Christmas Ever would be fun for a shaker card. I'll also use Joy to the World the Lord Has Come later in this video, and the Holiday Cheer enclosed is perfect to stamp on a matching envelope. I'm starting by cutting my laminating pouch in half. I don't need the whole thing, so I saved the other half for later. Now I have a piece of scrap cardstock that I'll put up into the fold of the laminating pouch. Again, that just gives it some stability when it feeds through our laminator. Now I will open up the laminating pouch and will stamp on the inside of it. So it's in the corner of my MISTI here. I'm inking up that large sentiment with white pigment ink once again. Any color pigment ink would work here. I just really like the look of that bright white. So I'll stamp that into my laminating pouch. Then I will lightly heat set it, which I discovered you don't have to do. But if you have a really juicy ink pad, you might need to do that a little bit so that it doesn't smear and spread as it goes through the laminator. I didn't have that happen, just in case you have a brand new ink pad. Okay, so now I'm closed up my laminating pouch. I put it in the folded end first, where that piece of cardstock is, and feed it through the laminator. I one time fed a laminating pouch through with nothing in it, and it got caught in my laminator. It was a different brand laminator. But that's why I put that little piece of cardstock in there, just to be sure that it doesn't get crumbled up as you start to feed it through. So there, check out that beautiful crisp white image. Now that we have the window of our shaker card ready, let's create the walls of our shaker box. For this, I have 2 large rectangle dies, and I'm using Easy C tape to tape them down onto a piece of teal cardstock. This tape is great because it doesn't tear my cardstock. It holds the dies in place nicely, and I can reuse those pieces. So I'll run that through my die cut machine to form a frame. I will repeat this process to create 5 frames. And if you wanted to, you could instead use foam tape to form the walls of your frame. I just like stacked cardstock frames instead. For the back of our shaker window, I'm using the larger of the 2 rectangle dies and cutting from a piece of navy cardstock. This is where I will do some decorations that will show through in the back of our shaker window. I will also die cut some snowflakes. These snowflake dies are included in the card kit I showed you at the beginning of this video. They're beautiful dies and a nice large size. I will take these die cuts and glue them onto that navy cardstock piece. Now I accidentally got some glue, some of the spray adhesive that I used, in a few spots on the background. Instead of starting over, I'm just stamping on top of it. It hides that little bit of dark adhesive that had dried. And now we have some navy snowflakes included on the background. And these snowflakes are in one of the card kit stamp sets. Now we have the back of our shaker window, the walls of our shaker window, and the clear acetate piece for the front. Now it's time to assemble it. I have all these frames that I die cut, and I'm gluing them together with Gina K liquid adhesive. This is the Connect adhesive to build up the walls. Again, you could use foam tape for this if you prefer. I just think this gives it a nice finished look. So I'm gluing 4 of these frames together. Then we have our acetate window that we created by doing this laminated stamping. I have a 5th frame here that I'm putting double-sided tape on the back of. I will take off the release paper from this and add it around our stamped laminated piece, so around that sentiment. You can see how bright white crisp that is over there on the right. So this will frame that. Sorry, my head gets in the way. It's the best way to make sure I have it centered. Once I have that pressed down, I can use my scissors to cut the excess off the sides. Now I'm putting double-sided tape on the back of the frame again. So we have our laminated piece sandwiched between the 2 layers of double-sided tape. And then we can put the layered frames behind that. So now it has nice dimensional walls around it. So you can put anything you want to in here, any sequins. I had these silver sparkly holographic stars, and I put a little pile in the center of our background there. You can put as much or as little as you want in here. You could even put gemstones if you want. Now I will put adhesive on the back of our stacked frame and line that up with the background of our shaker window. The nice thing about the laminated pouch is it's nice and thick. So you have really thick shaker window on this. So it'll hold up nicely through the mail, and it gives lots of nice shine, and we have the crisp white stamping. So I matted this with a piece of navy cardstock and then added it to a white folded note card that is 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches. I white heat embossed the holiday cheer enclosed on a matching envelope. You can see all those beautiful sparkly stars inside and how it goes nicely with the sentiment that we stamped inside of the laminating pouch to create that window. So this shows that you can use this laminated stamping technique with any kind of stamp. It could even be one with lots of detail like this sentiment. Okay, both of my examples so far have used white pigment ink. Let's do some examples with different colors of ink. Now this is a tag instead of a card, but I just couldn't wait to use this large floral image from the Gina K Designs Festive Flowers stamp set. This is another new set. I really like the large size of that floral image on the top because it covers a card nicely. You can color it, you can watercolor it, you can use it for techniques. If you want another idea for this, check out the video that I'll link here on the top right. You see that card over on the right? That is from a couple years ago, a stamp set Gina designed for Stamptember, a different set, and it has a similar feel. And the technique video I did for that is super fast and fun, and it would work great with this set. But today I'm just going to do the laminated stamping with that large floral image for a different look. So I have the other half of a laminating pouch and I'll open it up. I'll put a piece of scrap cardstock in the top so it's ready to go through once we've done our stamping. This time instead of white pigment ink, I'm using a silver pigment ink. There are many different silver metallic pigment inks out there. This happens to be from Hero Arts. Any colored pigment ink would work here too. Some hybrid inks would work, but I find pigment to definitely be the best option. So you can see the silver stamping there. I will go ahead and fold this up. I didn't even do any heat setting to this first. You really don't need to. Close it up and feed it through the laminator. Folded edge first with that cardstock inside. And look at that beautiful result. Nice and crisp, and it has that metallic look to it. I wanted to show you that you can die cut through these laminated pieces. This is the tag die set that's included in the card kit that I showed you at the beginning of the video once again. I'll use that large tag die that also has faux stitching on the inside edge. So I'm just moving the die around to find a place that I want to die cut from the stamping. Remember, our stamping is trapped inside of the lamination, so I don't have to worry about messing it up as I do this. I'll talk more about that in a moment. So after I die cut that, I also die cut from a few different scraps of cardstock that I have in blues and teals. I'm just kind of doing a color block tag to go behind our clear stamped tag. I also white heat embossed a sentiment on one of our color block pieces that'll get glued to the front of the acetate tag. I also have a thin strip of silver glitter cardstock that I had left over that I'm adding to the front of the tag right below our heat embossed sentiment. Now I have a piece of old ribbon that I've had for ages that I'm feeding through the top. It wasn't big enough to tie a knot or a bow, so what I like to do is take a piece of cording and just tie it around the folded ribbon and then make that into a bow. It's a fun way to create a little decorative top to a tag. So this tag you could add to a gift, or you could put it on the front of a note card and turn it into a card. Many things that you could do with it. So here's a look at the completed tag. Now, if I would have stamped with silver pigment ink on the front of a piece of acetate, it wouldn't want to dry there. I could silver heat emboss, but you would have to have an acetate that won't warp under heat. So this trick of using a laminating pouch with your silver pigment ink inside is a nice one to get crisp results that will dry and be perfectly fine to the touch. And keep in mind, before you close the pouch, you could put a little bit of glitter in there too. Now the sentiment that I used on that tag is from this Gina K Designs Holiday Sentimental stamp set. Lots of fantastic, meaningful sentiments here that you could stamp on the front of a card or on the inside. So I just use a basic one on my tag that was white heat embossed. Okay, I have one more example for you, and this is a quick one. This time I used a sparkly gold pigment ink inside of my laminating pouch. There really is no other way to achieve this on a clear piece, as it would give a very different look if I did gold heat embossing. So once again, I have half of a laminating pouch. I'm opening it up and putting a scrap of cardstock in the top. Now I'll open up the pouch so I can stamp on the inside. I'm using Joy to the World, the Lord Has Come from that same script stamp set that I showed you earlier. This time I'm using a gold pigment ink. There are many different types of gold or metallic pigment inks out there. This one is from Altenew, and it's not like a solid gold. It is like a sparkly, shimmery gold. It's so beautiful in real life. So I'm stamping that inside of my laminating pouch. And then as I remove that, I can make sure my piece of scrap cardstock is up in the folded end. And then I'll close this and run this through our laminator. I probably should have added some maybe gold glitter in there or little gold stars, but I just left it as it is. And look at that shiny image that you have there. It's really neat how it's just floating on that acetate, or actually inside of the laminating pouch. I'm really into using plum colors, so I die cut 3 snowflakes from each of the sizes from plum cardstock, and I glued those together for a stacked look. Now I have a darker plum cardstock that is 4 by 5 1/4, and I'm gluing the snowflakes, those stacked snowflakes, onto that background. Every once in a while, I'll bring my acetate piece in there to make sure I have room in the center to be able to see Joy to the World, the Lord Has Come. Now that acetate piece is going to kind of float there on top of our snowflakes. Let me show you how I did that. First, I stamped some stars in the background and then added my piece to a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch white note card. Now I've got these little gold gemstones and I'm putting one at the center of each of our snowflakes. I'll also use those gold gemstones to attach our acetate piece to the center, that clear piece to the center of our card. The way I'm doing that is I'm hiding my adhesive behind those gold gemstones. So here on the front of that laminated piece, I'm putting drops of strong liquid adhesive. This is Gina K Connect. So I'll put some on the bottom, some on the left, and some at the top. Now, sorry my head gets in the way, but I put a gold bobble onto each of those drops of adhesive so you can see them on my clear piece. Now I'll flip that over and put a drop of the liquid adhesive on the back of each of those baubles. Now when I take this and lay it on our card, that adhesive will stick to our snowflakes. And then we have this piece kind of floating there in the middle. Doesn't take too long to dry, and it will hold that acetate piece right there in the middle. A great way to add your laminated pieces, your acetate to a card, is to hide your adhesive behind embellishments. So here's a look at the final card. I really like that shimmery looking sentiment that's floating in that laminated pouch. So again, this technique works really well with your pigment inks. You could also use your StazOn inks. Some hybrid inks work okay for this, but you definitely don't want to use dye ink, as dye ink will just smear inside the pouch as it goes through the laminator. So break out your metallic pigment inks, your white pigment inks, even your black pigment inks will give great results. So there you have a fun way to use your laminator and laminating pouches creatively. Remember, these laminating pouches are nice and thick, so they're great from creating note cards, fronts for a shaker card window. The sky is the limit. Keep in mind that many different stamps would work great for giving a nice crisp image with this technique. And if you want to learn more techniques that you can do with laminating pouches, including the floating embellishment technique, I'll link to that video here. It's a really fun one and a great way to use up some of your little embellishments. If you're interested in these particular products, I have them linked below. And in the middle here, I link to a couple of the other videos I mentioned in this one. And on the top right, you can go to my blog to see photos of the different cards I created today. Thank you for visiting. I hope you subscribe so you can catch future videos, and we'll see you soon with another technique video.